Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Winner's Circle. I'm Derrick.
And I'm Cody.
And we are going to be hearing from the 13th. That's the 13th evicted house guest this season, Big Brother 23. And as many of you already know, it's Kyland. We're not spoiling anything here. We just covered it on the recap. Crazy episode. Mm-hmm. However, we're going to save that, the ending of the show, for the ending of our episode. We have some other questions for him. Like Cody has already said, we always keep the questions kind of similar to hear how they change as the season progresses. But as you can expect, Cody, Kyland had a lot to say about everything.
Well, here's the thing. I will say this about the interview before we even get started on it. There were parts of this interview where I was listening and I was like, I totally get what people are talking about in the house. Because there were answers where I was like, man, that was long-winded. I'm not into I guess I get what he said, but God, he could have got to that point way quicker.
It does give you some insight into the house guest, right? Because
exactly.
We were talking in the recap about how he can get on people's nerves. I don't think he intends on doing it, but if you're in the house with him 24/7, you've been there, I've been there, the littlest things start to bother you after a while when you're locked in a cage with someone. I could definitely see, and we like Kyland. I think Kyland made a really poor choice on this episode. This last episode, we'll get to it. But, sometimes good people make bad decisions.
Yeah.
But just judging him based on if I'm looking at him as a house guest I'd be going against or living with, I could see how the constant, and I don't think he does it intentionally, but the constant going around in circles with his conversations could get a little annoying. And maybe that's why, because you were saying, I don't know what happened that people, maybe it's just a lot of little things.
Yeah, I think the point that you just made is so true, right? Where you're in love, everybody's in love with each other in the beginning of the game. And by like week 6, day 60, stuff like that, you start to just be like, when somebody walks in and like does something constantly, you're like, here we go again. You and I would say it all the time. You and I would say it all the time. Like, oh my God, here we go. And so I think with these long-winded answers, it was probably the way that he just articulates and forms sentences and the way he communicates, right? And so I feel like people in the house just kind of got over it, which is why I think everybody was so harsh in the jury about him.
Kyland comes off very calculated. And when you're in the house and you're constantly trying to judge or evaluate someone, if it always sounds like they're planning their answer out as they're saying it, it can raise some red flags, even if they're being genuine.
Well, look at his demeanor in some of these answers, just for you viewers you guys are watching. He does a lot of he pauses a lot and kind of, it seems like he's looking for what he wants to say. And it's like he doesn't want to stop, so he's going to continue. So even when maybe you would go to say something, he's still trying to find what he wants to say. So maybe he then ends up talking over you, where there's no chance for that here because he's just giving the answer. So I can totally see where if he was kind of like looking for it and people would be like, are you going to get to the point? And then maybe they go to say something, he probably cut him off. And I could totally see that translating into kind of what the opinions that we were seeing a lot of the jury talk about Kyland with.
Yeah. And now to be fair to Kyland, week 1, we said it. Derrick X pointed out something with Kyland where he has trouble communicating. He's always had, I'm not going to call it a disability. I don't think it's that extreme, but he's had an issue with speaking, and I think his mind works a little faster or slower than his mouth. And he was open about that with a few people. So I think that's part of it. So we're not by any means knocking the guy. We're just pointing out our own observations and how they can be perceived by another house guest. That's all we're doing here. We're not making fun of him in any way, shape, or form.
No, absolutely never would do that. And we've said it so many times how much we really like Kyland.
Love Kyland. Yeah, I think he's a good person. I think he means well. I just think he had a really big lapse in judgment, and we're going to get to it. You want to hit first part where he finds out that it's us?
This is the intro. Kyland finds out he is being interviewed by the Winner's Circle with Derrick and Cody.
Okay, Derrick and Cody, what is up? Seriously, y'all two are my all-time favorite players, absolute icons. I'm honored to be chatting with you, and I can't wait, hopefully, for an opportunity to do it more and hopefully someday live. So thank you so much for the time. Looking forward to the questions.
Yeah. So, it's really nice to hear. I would love to talk to Kyland live. I'd love to talk to Kyland kind of like off, just kind of like, get to him. He's been in the game for a very long time. He's been through a lot in the game. He's somebody that I'd like to get to like off of the air and off of everything and just on a personal level talk to him just to see, because I'm a little worried for Kyland to be honest, with what he's going to walk into the jury house with, what he's going to walk into outside of the house with everybody. How that, what could happen from a cast standpoint when everybody finds out, the back and forth that he had with Xavier. I just feel like he's going to need somebody to talk to. And so.
Well, we know he's got a good support system at home because he has, his family members, his mom, Tara, John. I mean, so he's going to have a support system. And listen, Kyland seems like the type of guy, he does say it later in this episode, not to get ahead. I keep saying not to get ahead, but I keep doing it. That if he finds out he has something he needs to apologize for or to explain, he has no problem doing it. So he's probably going to get that opportunity. But we do appreciate him being fans of ours. And this is all the house guests being fans of ours. And it's not something we ever look past. We are fans of him now as well as all the house guests. They had a great season. So Kyland, if you're watching this, we love you, but we got to be straight with you like a friend or a brother would be. So it's sometimes we've given you a lot of praise this season, but with that also comes some tough love when you screw up. And, you screwed up on this last episode. So don't take it personal. It's coming from a place of, like I said, love. So, we're going to roll.
Yeah, we're not the same ones that are going to punch you or beat you or, kick you while you're down. We're not those guys and never will be.
You just got to keep it straight.
Just, you'll get enough kicks on social media, I guess. But question number 1 is, what were your expectations before going into the house? And now that you've been in there, were those expectations met? And if not, how are they different?
I definitely had a lot of expectations going into the house. And I'd say that one thing that was met was how much fun and excitement and challenges would be in the house. Actually, I'd say that those expectations were exceeded. I had more fun, more excitement, and more challenges than I even believed was possible. But beyond that, I also had a lot of growth and a lot of confrontation with my own faults and shortcomings that I'd been unable to ever see as clearly as you can when you are spending 24/7, over 80 days or almost 80 days with people in the house, the way that you do in this game. So that was not something that I was ready for. But all the good parts and all the challenging parts exceeded my expectations for sure.
So that was an answer right there where I got to be honest, he kind of lost me. I was like in and out of that answer. And that's what I think is, I felt like there was a point where I know what you're saying. And then there was a point where I was like, wait, what are you saying? And then I was like, oh, okay, I get what you're saying. And then it was like, I feel like he could have hit that pretty quickly. And, I tell you, this is $1 million smile right there that we got this pause on. I love Kyland, and I will tell Kyland if I get the opportunity, or if he even wants to talk to me afterwards. He's somebody that I would love to. I genuinely really like Kyland. Everybody can think what they want to think about what happened. This is a very emotional state that he was in yesterday. And so when you're in emotional states, everything is heightened, and I think you make choices that you will reflect on when it's all said and done and the dust settles. But that answer right there, maybe if you could give a little bit of clarification on it. I felt like it was like he learned a lot about himself through confrontation with house guests that he didn't really know about himself. He kind of lost me with a little bit of this. I didn't really.
Well, the first part, I agree with him. But going in there, you want to play the game, and then you get to play in these competitions, and they do exceed your expectations. They're so much bigger and more grand when you get in there, and they're fun. I remember playing them and I was like, I cannot believe I'm hanging from a rubber, spit right now, seeing how getting spilt, ketchup sauce spilt on me. It was amazing. Mm-hmm. But to the second part, what he is saying is that Big Brother really has a way of throwing right in your face some things about yourself that you may not want to acknowledge. Mm-hmm. Both internally, you see him in there, but also externally when you get out. And he's going to have that. And I have seen the stuff on social media where people are calling him a misogynist. He said some off-color things about Tiffany. Mm-hmm. He made a bad choice with Xavier. And I think the real sign of growth for Kyland is going to be coming out and addressing those things, but not making excuses for him, but looking at it, seeing it from the perspective of the people on the outside, and looking inside himself to see if there's something there, a flaw, as he put it, that he needs to work on.
Mm-hmm.
And if he can do that, I think that is a real sign of growth. And Big Brother is something that is one of the few places where that can really happen, because there's very few situations where you're going to have a camera on you 24/7 for almost 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
And you learn a lot about yourself. I learned a lot about myself, and I was later in life. I had a kid, and I still came out of there realizing certain things about myself that I liked and things I really didn't like, and it allows you to change. So we'll see if he takes some of the constructive criticism from some of the individuals who have pointed out things that he has said. He called out, he was talking directly to Tiffany's son while he was in there. He's said some things that in looking back at it, I hope he sees that it probably wasn't the best choice. But if he does that, I do agree with you. We're saying we like Kyland as the person. We're not saying we agree with everything he's done or said. And that's why I don't want you guys to look at us and go, oh, of course they're praising him and they love him. We know deep down he's got a good heart. Does he need to grow a little? Of course, we all do.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't mean I genuinely think at the core, Kyland is a good person. And that's when we say we like Kyland, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, quite frankly, if people do feel like that and want to come after us, you can go find something else to, I don't know, argue about. Because quite frankly, I could like somebody that you dislike severely. And at the end of the day, that reflects more on you than it does on me, because I do see him as a genuine person, as I do see a lot of the other house guests in there as genuine people that it's easy to judge. It's easy to be a Monday morning quarterback. You know what I mean? It's easy to be a Monday morning quarterback.
It is. And he had the courage to go on the show. A lot of people wouldn't. And
you'll find out from an answer that he says later on, which showed me a lot about he is someone that will reflect. And if he does feel like there is something that he needs to address, he has no problem owning up. And I think that says a lot about him as well. So on to cue number 2.
Yeah, question number 2. Again, one of our oldies but goodies. Now that you've had an opportunity to play the game, what advice would you give for future house guests? This is always a good one for you guys out there who are thinking about applying.
To a future house guest to enter the Big Brother house would be to play your game your way and know what it is that you are willing to give or give up in that game. I had a very unique opportunity this season with the cookout, and I knew that there were things that I was willing to give up for ideals that were beyond myself, that were important to me. And even once we hit that goal, I had new ideals that I wanted to live up to. And for those, I was willing to give everything. And because they were so much aligned with me, I have no regrets. So that is what I would advise anyone to do, is to figure out what things you are willing to do or not do, to make sure that you leave the house with no regrets. And also make sure that you play your own game, which was advice that I heard and advice that I followed, as far as not trying to follow anyone else's exact strategy from seasons past, because your season is going to be different. Hopefully, if I'm in future seasons, I know those will be different. And there are definitely things I would have loved to have done differently in terms of playing a more individual game for myself. But like I said, I made a decision to play for something bigger than myself. And that's something that I'm good with, given the specific circumstances that I had for this season and the specific opportunities that were there.
Yeah. I think that was a phenomenal answer. Kind of shows, for me, the big takeaway is you have to be willing and able to adjust. You can go in there with a plan. We talk about this all the time. And the plan in this situation, more specifically than anything else, really took a different path and took a monstrous detour, because normally you do go in to play for yourself, and you're playing for yourself in a way where you have to adjust each and every week, or else you can't just stick to that same plan that you did in the beginning, or else you could end up hurting yourself. But the cookout members played for a very different cause throughout the entire game until they got up into the 6, and then it became very individualistic. But at that point, it could be too late, because it's like we talk about, a lot of things that get laid down in the previous parts of the season in your gameplay are what is going to take you further, but they were always playing for a group and never really playing for an individual themselves individually. So I think that was a pretty good answer. Had good insight into what he went through specifically with having to adjust his game.
The thing that I took away from that was something that I've never heard before, but I think and maybe I'm interpreting it this way, and this isn't even what he was saying, but I like the idea of before you go into the house, let's say you get selected for the show, before you go into the house, when you're in a clear mind and a clear thought process and you're not under pressure, having a conversation with yourself, maybe even writing it down to develop boundaries, things that you're willing to do in the house, things that you're not willing to do. And when you're writing that, memorize what you wrote, because when you get in the house, if you find yourself willing to go beyond those boundaries, you have to consider the fact that now you've been trapped away in a house for however many days, and maybe you're not of clear mind. And you should probably revert back to the boundaries that you and the plans that you set for yourself before you went into the house, before you were affected by this game, because it does affect you, because that's probably the better format to follow than, being in the moment and making a decision based on that moment, as opposed to who you were before you started playing, because you can lose yourself in there. Mm-hmm. And so I do think it's a good idea to come up with like a vision board or something where you're like, hey, this is as far as I'm willing to go in the game. Mm-hmm. And if you find yourself going beyond that while you're playing, maybe it's time to reel it back in a little bit.
Yeah, because that's where a situation where you might come out and be like,
what was I thinking? And I would never do that.
What was I doing in there? And then It's hard for you to, if you're getting backlash for something like that, it's hard for you to really like find peace with it, because you're like, I knew I shouldn't have did that. Why would I let myself slip up? Why would I let myself go to that point?
Right.
I think that was, it's a great point.
It's a great way to say it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
next question, right? 3.
Question number 3 is this is the one where we're asking him who he thinks is in the best position in the house. And then on the flip side, who would he like to see following him out?
Isn't it interesting? You guys will like this one.
I think that the person in the best position in the house would probably be a toss-up between Xavier and Derrick. I think that as far as winning that last HOH, obviously Xavier has the upper hand there if we're speaking probability and past performance. I think that there are few people that had a high probability of beating him that last HOH. And I think that given our history of competitions, ones that we played in that actually, were ones that we weren't throwing, and ones that may have mattered, I had a pretty good record against the times that we actually compete against each other, as far as whether winning or at least doing better than him. And so he doesn't have a lot of competition as far as winning that HOH. And there's a good chance that the second strongest competitor based on past performance, Derrick, would probably take him as well. So that being said, it could be either of their games if either of them win. I think the biggest wild card might be Azza. If she wins, who's she going to take? And that's something actually I don't even know. So that's as far as the second part of who I'd love to come see after me. I probably would say Xavier, and that's just because, like I said, on a representation side, I think that there is a concept of like win by any means necessary. And Azza and Big D weren't strong competitors as far as competitions. So they had to make moves as far as removing competitors. Xavier kind of positioned himself as a strong competitor, and he was. And so eliminating me gave him an easier path. And I think that this year it'd be pretty epic if we have a winner who doesn't take the easy path. It's the first Black winner of the history of the show. And having them achieve a certain standard of excellence based on, the things that I value and think would be pretty cool, that's what I'd like to see.
You know what he just said there.
Yeah. So, listen, we don't have to psychoanalyze this. Kyland's bitter right now. He's really bitter. He's throwing shade at Xavier, saying, I was a better competitor than you. Anytime we went head up, I beat you. And he almost sounds like he's, And I really hope he doesn't do this, but it sounds like right now what he's doing for us, the audience, is trying to manipulate us into believing that there's a comparison between Derrick F and Xavier as far as this game's concerned. Like Xavier, Derrick F, did what he had to do, but never went outside of his means, where Xavier did. And, he didn't choose the easiest path, which we all, as a fan of Big Brother, he knows a lot of the point is to get out the people that could beat you. That's the name of the game. So I'll just say this. I hope that come finale night, Kyland has had some time to process everything that transpired this season. Maybe talk to a Tiffany or talk to a Claire or a Hannah or a Derrick X, whoever he values, and realizes that it's a bad look for him to vote for anybody at this point. If Xavier's in the final two, if he votes for anybody but Xavier, it's his vote, but it's not the right vote. That's just my opinion. It's just not the right vote, and it's going to look bad on him. So I hope come finale night, we have a change of tune. I don't know. What was your takeaway on it?
Exactly that. But also that right there kind of showed me exactly why when Derrick F was saying anything before he was leaving, it was not where I get it. When Derrick was like, listen, I didn't think I could beat you. He was like, no, I get it. And it was the sole focus was on Xavier. That's why he wouldn't let Xavier off the hook and was waiting for something further than, well, don't talk to me about the game, because I thought you wanted, competitors and I guess, that head-to-head Titan kind of battle in the ending. And that's what you made me feel, at least. And so, Derrick F, I don't want to hear from you. I do understand, I do think you should have taken me out. But Xavier, what about you? And that's why I think he was so laser focused on Xavier, which gave him that blurred, really just blackout, or red out, whatever it's called, where you're just I'm coming for blood right now, and I'm going to say or do whatever means necessary. That's why I think he was so laser focused on Xavier.
Yeah, and I'm assuming this is the night of the eviction. It seems like he's in the same clothes, isn't he?
I can't remember
what he was wearing. I thought he was wearing blue, but either way, he's back in the hotel. I've recognized that room. I know what hotel he's at. So it's probably the same night that he got evicted, and he's still a little pumped up, but hopefully as now we're sitting here, he's maybe calmed down a little bit and thought about the game, because he is a good player. He's a great player, great competitor. So he should understand the difference between what Derrick F did this season and what Xavier did. But, he did start to kind of go into the Xavier thing, talking about representation and having a winner that reflects what he values in a winner. So we asked him straight out. We told you guys we were going to if we had the opportunity, and we asked him right out, do you regret the altercation between you and Xavier? And this is what he had to say.
As far as the altercation between myself and Xavier, during my eviction, my only concerns are that people don't specifically listen to the words that I said. I have had a lot of conversations with Xavier, speaking about family and the things that we as individuals and we as our families value. And one thing that we discussed was valuing people like Kobe Bryant or Goku, or competitors that love to face their competition head on, that don't take the easy route, that don't take the indirect confrontation, but they take it head on and stand toe to toe at the end. We already created an idealistic, movie style season by having all 6 of us make it to the end, accomplishing something that's never been done. If this was any other season and representation wasn't such a huge factor, then of course, you can just win the game using any of the tactics that are open in Big Brother. And that could be, getting rid of competition at your opportune moments. But as I said, since for weeks in the game, that wasn't something that I was going to do. Even if I knew the outcome and I knew what Xavier was going to do, the only thing I would have changed is I would have done a little bit better at that last HOH or veto competition. Hopefully that would have been the thing I try and change. So as far as the conversation I had with Xavier, my biggest thing is listen to the words, because I know that, of course, I had anticipated that they would irk him and get under his skin. But none of the actual literal words that I said were derogatory, disrespectful towards his actual family members or towards his character. I specifically brought up things that he and I had discussed. So I know that they can easily be misconstrued, but I invite anyone to look at the specific words that were said and the context that I said them in, and look at how they were me bringing up things that we had talked about and things that were objectively true in that context. And of course, I'm always happy to apologize to he or his family if they choose to not see that context, or if I'm wrong about something that I said and it did do something other than what I just described. I'm always happy to take on that accountability, but I tend to choose my words carefully. And as long as I accomplish the goal that I just stated, I'm good with that. And I hope that others listen to those words carefully as well.
You want to go take that away first?
Yeah. Did it just end? I'm listening to my end, but I know.
Yeah.
So, okay. There's a lot we could talk about here, but I'm going to try to make it succinct. I went back and listened to exactly what was said in that conversation. I replayed it like maybe 5 or 6 times. Mm-hmm. And although I think what Kyland was trying to say was we both admire Kobe Bryant and Kobe would never back down from a challenge, you clearly did. But he took it a step further. And I believe, don't hold me to this, but I think Xavier's nephew is named after Kobe Bryant. I don't know if his name's Kobe or not, but I keep getting confused on that. But either way, Xavier made the connection, the correlation between Kobe Bryant and his nephew. Mm-hmm. Clearly, that was the first thing he did. And Kyland knew that because Kyland said to him, well, if your nephew doesn't have a man to look up to, that's your fault, essentially, is what he's saying. And he said it like 3 times. So it wasn't like he said it once. He repeated it. Well, I'm just saying, if your nephew doesn't have a man to look up to, meaning you, Xavier, then he's not a man to look, then he should be ashamed that you're basically his uncle. Let's break that down. The reasoning why Kyland's saying that is because him and the cookout representing something so much bigger this season, but Kyland has to eat his own words here because the cookout agreed that they were going to do everything in their power to get to the final 6, and then they were going to do whatever they had to do individually to win. And Xavier is doing that. You making the decision that in your mind, the honorable way to win Big Brother is to take the best player is admirable. But Xavier didn't come in here to do that. He came in here to win. And he's choosing the path of least resistance. So you can't judge someone for playing Big Brother the way it's intended to be played. If you were able to win doing what you did, hats off to you. But you can't belittle someone else because they chose to play the game that they all, including you, signed up for. And at the point when the cookout was in the final 6, it was game on, which is why you, Kyland, went after Tiffany.
Right.
Because you felt like you couldn't beat her in the end. You couldn't trust her. Xavier did not want to sit next to you. Probably because you're a great player, but also because the people remaining in the house have not played that great. And you allowed that to happen, Kyland, by evicting people like Tiffany and Hannah. Right. So you reap what you sow. So I understand what he's saying, but I have to disagree with him because although he may have meant it differently, the exact words he used multiple times were, maybe your nephew doesn't have anybody to look up to. And I think you're going to get into it, but there's something that we found out after recording the recap regarding Xavier's brother, right?
Yeah, so this is where I agree with everything you just said, and it was literally spot on to what I was going to say. You can say whatever you want about his gameplay or whatever, but yes, when Xavier was having those conversations with you, he knew how to have conversations, and I don't think he was using things, using the nephew. It was just, when you're having a conversation with somebody, you're kind of mirroring them. And if Kyland was leading the conversation, Xavier's a chameleon in this house, which is why I think he's so respected by the jury. And he was just like saying a lot of things because he knew, but at the end of the day, Xavier was going to do whatever he had to do to get to the end and win the money. Where I think the repercussions are going to be coming from, because this is how I would feel, which I did not know this. It's the fact that Xavier's brother has passed, and Kyland knows that. And the nephew, it's not only saying the nephew has no one to look up to because you're supposed to be his father figure. It cuts a little bit deeper, being that, from what I understand, Xavier's brother recently passed. And so Xavier's now in this house and he's playing this game, And he has opened up because he's definitely had very deep conversations with Kyland. They've probably had very deep conversations about his nephew, about who he wants to be for his nephew. And I don't know the exact conversations, but Kyland obviously took that in a way where I guess you want to be someone for your nephew to look up to because you're all your nephews has to look up to. Now, being that your brother has passed, that's where I feel like you could say whatever you want. You could say it in any way that you felt your conversations about Kobe Bryant, about Goku, whatever. His brother.
Goku.
Yeah. Well, this because it's like, I don't really, to be honest, I was a huge Dragon Ball Z fan. I'm not entirely sure, but I understand the Kobe Bryant reference completely.
Yes, me too. Yep.
But where you completely lose all of that to me is Jesus. The brother has passed away recently. And for me, if I'm in there and my brother who's passed away recently, I'm taking care of my nephew, his son, and now somebody's telling me that he has no one to look up to,
including you,
because my brother's passed, including you, because you're a coward. I'd be like, I would do what Xavier did. My hands would be behind my back, but I'd be like, you and me are gonna have big problems when we're out of the house. Confrontate, and I don't know. That's my opinion because just thinking about it right now, and I really, and I don't say this in any way. I hope I'm giving this to Kyland to watch, to be like, I didn't even think of it like that, because quite frankly, I didn't even think of it like that yesterday until this information came to light.
To the point where you and we heard this information today. We actually went back and edited the recap episode.
Totally.
We've taken out a section where we were like, we didn't think it was too bad. We're being transparent with you. We took it right out because it's completely not true. Based on this understanding of Xavier's brother. And Kyland had a chance to walk it back. He was heated, but he had a chance to walk it back because Xavier said, I know you're not talking about my nephew right now. And he could have said, no, I'm not talking about your nephew. I'm talking about Kobe Bryant and the way we wanted to conduct ourselves like Kobe. But he doubled down on, I'm just saying, if your nephew doesn't have anybody to look up to as a man, then he doesn't have anybody to, that's sad. He said it like 2 or 3 times and I was like, yikes. You could have backpedaled and kind of rephrased it because Xavier told you how he was taking it. So I think nobody's going to disagree that Kyland was in the wrong here. He stepped over the line. It wasn't for strategy purposes. He was leaving the game. The only thing that we can hope is that Kyland looks back at that scene, because he will see it a million times, reflects on it, realizes he was wrong, and apologizes to Xavier and his family, which he said he's willing to do. And if he does that, I think, again, good people make bad decisions. We live in a world where you should forgive people who are willing to see the error of their ways. And I will if Xavier does. If Xavier's okay accepting the apology and can move on from it, which I think Xavier will, to be honest with you. From what I'm seeing in the house after that, he seems like he's kind of already over it. And he's like, Kai, you said my nephew has someone he needs to look up to. I'm going to prove that he does have someone to look up to by winning this game.
Yeah.
So I think that's how he's looking at it. I think he knows Kyland was heated in the moment, and I hope those two make up.
I really do.
And maybe they remain friends after this, because Kai, my man, you were wrong in this one, bud. Yeah. But, we're not going to sit here and kick you when you were down.
Yeah.
You'll have time to review it. And I hope you come to a similar conclusion and you make that call, or you talk to him in person.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's also an aspect to it that people need to understand. He was heated, right? Like, he was really heated. So you are completely blinded as to, okay, I know what I'm trying to say, but it's not about what you're trying to say sometimes. It's about how it's taken by the other person. And so I think when Xavier's hearing it, he's like, dude, I know you're not talking about my nephew who he doesn't have anybody looked up to. I've opened up to you about my brother who passed away. Yeah. I've opened up to you about the role that I want to have in my nephew's life. I know you're not going there. And Kyland was still digging because he had in his head the blinders of representation. Yep. And I thought you wanted that Kobe Bryant mentality, that Mamba mentality of like, we go for the best, like the way Kobe would never want to back down from Jordan. There's always stuff, and it's extremely emotional how people would talk about it, why all these other athletes would get emotional. And so that hits deep. And so that's where Kai was blinded on, and Xavier took it not that way. Because Xavier was trying to give him praise, and was like, listen, your game, like the game. And he was like, no personal. And Xavier was like, that's the only reason why I hope he sees the perspective, because we're not coming from a place, which I am 100% sure there's probably going to be other people out there that just kind of like dog him in a way where it's just kind of like, I think it's classless how people do it, quite frankly. And for the people that are like kind of like, because I see some of the headlines and stuff like that, it's not about just like kicking someone while they're down. It's about trying to help somebody like come to a realization and pick them up, in my opinion, even when somebody does something wrong. So I hope Kyland sees us.
Cody, stop talking sense.
I just want him to see, because I also want Kyland
Stop making sense, buddy. Stop making too much sense.
It's more for him, to be honest. You know what I mean? It's more for him.
No, but dude, you're making a lot of sense. What I'm saying is you're making a lot of sense because we live in a world now where it's like trendy.
Yeah,
to attack the person who's kind of
you're going to get the clicks.
Villain.
You're going to get clicks.
Yeah,
Look at me.
Villain,
I'm going after Kyland, who's a villain. It's like,
God forbid we build someone up and try to make them better, right?
You know what I mean?
But no, it's well said. And Kyland, we'll be here for you if you want to talk. Not that we're the voice of reason for you, but you have a good foundation around you, and I'm sure. I'm hoping you make the right decision. We'll see how it goes.
Yep.
One final question.
One final question. This is a fan question, so congratulations to @_ Maddie Hendricks with a really cool question for. It was really a blanket question that could have been asked to anybody, and the question was: did you play the game how you thought you would have in the beginning, or did you play it differently once you went into the house? And how do you think that affected the outcome?
Maddie Hendricks, thank you for the question. I absolutely had to play this game differently than the way that I thought I would. When I first was going into the house, I had a mindset of I have to win. I'm going to be the first Black winner in Big Brother history. As soon as I got in and I saw the other members of the cookout and spoke with them day one and realized we had this other opportunity, I realized that my goal had shifted to, let me just make sure that we do have our first Black winner. It doesn't have to be me. And from that moment on, I was willing to sacrifice my individual game, even absolutely, to the point of telling people really early on. I was willing to go out if it meant that the rest of them could go forward undetected. And that was something that I was committed to without hesitation. And so having to play a game where I was looking out for the best interest of 6 people as opposed to just myself had a lot of challenges and a lot of difficult moments. And that was everything from getting blood in my hands or making myself a target just to keep the target off of players who had less of a probability of being able to defend themselves or keep themselves safe, all the way to eliminating allies that I had outside the cookout who would have had my back and would have been able to bring my individual game forward further, but they were simply too big of threats to leave in the house while safely moving all 6 of us forward. I was fortunate enough to get to have a direct role in some of these decisions, and even the painful ones all felt worth it on day 65 when the 6 of us completed our mission, broke history, made history, and got all 6 of us to the end. So that was different gameplay than I had expected, but for me, it was the choice that I felt best about and would never change.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say something, and I hope I'm wrong. The cookout absolutely accomplished a record-setting feat this year, regardless of them being a group entirely of people of color. They're the first alliance to ever do what they did, as far as starting at day one, getting a 6-person alliance, getting the final 6. And they did do their mission. They accomplished their mission, and he was a big part of it. Yeah. He won a lot of competitions. He made a lot of moves. He was moving chess pieces around. He was an influential part of the cookout. Him, Kyland, Xavier, and Tiffany, I think, are the 3 biggest factors in that group. That being said, and I hope I'm wrong, but I think Kyland may find that his defining moment on Big Brother 23 is the altercation with Xavier. Mm-hmm. That's the moment that I think everyone will remember. I think a lot of people will also remember the cookout. I'm not saying they won't. The cookout is definitely the big takeaway from the season because it probably will never be done again in that way, whether it's people of color, all white people, whatever it may be. To start at 6, to get to 6 and not be detected. 23 seasons has never happened, so don't expect it anytime soon again. But as far as Kyland Young, I do think that when people think about Big Brother 23, they're not going to think, oh, he was one of the big factors of the cookout. I think they're going to remember this blowout where it almost came to literally a fight in the middle of a live eviction. But I hope I'm wrong. That's just my initial thought. Maybe over time it'll subside and the bigger thing will be the cookout. But I know he's trying to drive home the mission, but I really think that this fight changes the narrative of Kyland Young a little bit.
Yeah. With that, I would like to add 3 HOHs, 3 vetoes. I know he had this altercation on his way out, but one moment absolutely does not define a season, and that does not define Kyland Young. And so I would hope that people kind of, don't just focus on that situation, which in a moment of extremely heightened emotions, he had a misstep, but everything that led up to that is why it was such a heightened emotional state and situation, because he felt like, and you saw it kind of unraveling in the episodes when he had the conversation with Big D right up until that point where he was sent out the house, and then it boiled over. And so it was boiling because he realized how much he was actually doing in the sense of winning competitions, keeping them safe, keeping them together with the competition wins, like making sure when he was the HOH and when he was winning the vetoes, he was taking care of the people that he wanted to. So I do hope that is wrong, because I do think that he had a bigger role in what was the cookout and that whole, goal that they were trying to get the 6 to be the final 6.
Yeah, I agree. So let's change subject real quick. Kyland, great house guest, probably will come back. And, I say that the fight will be a defining moment for him. Hate to tell you, it'll probably be the reason he also gets asked back, because they want that. Mm-hmm. They want that. Big Brother producers love that. They're eating it up like it's candy. So he's a good competitor, great player, polarizing, whether you love him or hate him, and he's willing to blow up like that. He has that ability. So that's great. That's great for them. Mm-hmm. Big Brother producers love that. So Kyland, we know your goal is to get into the opportunity. I think you're probably going to get it. So changing gears, we are coming to the finale.
Yeah.
Last recap that we have will be next week, Wednesday night, finale of Big Brother 23. Mm-hmm. We've been calling it all season. I think it's kind of known, but what's your thoughts going into the finale night? What's your prediction? Because we won't hear from us again until after the winner is crowned. So what are we expecting in Cody's eyes on finale night?
I already know what happens in the first HOH, so I'm not going to talk about that.
That's right.
I think it comes down to, can somebody have something slip up? There is something that I think somebody commented on one of our YouTube things, which kind of makes me like almost not really have any feeling. It was that Azah was talking about how she like really wants Xavier and Big D in the final too. Like she doesn't really, if I win, whatever. Somebody commented it. They could be wrong, which then would make me wrong. So then I'll shoot myself in the foot for bringing it up. But it was like, it almost makes me think like, even if Azah wins, like I think she might just take Xavier. Or Big D wins, he's going to take Xavier. I think Xavier's going to be in the final 2 no matter what.
Yeah.
And then
so
he's going to win it all.
He's going to win it all. I mean, I'm on a little different where if by chance Azah wins the final 3 HOH, we won't get into the first 2 parts, but my assumption from last week was that Xavier will win the first part, one of the 2 would win the second part, and they'll compete against Xavier in the final 3 part. If it's Azah, I think Azah is cutthroat enough where she would cut Xavier and be like, there's no chance of me beating you. Derrick F is my best friend. I'm taking him. But if Derrick F wins, I think he takes Xavier as well. But unless it's an absolute upset, which is possible. I go back to Vanessa Russo's season against Steve. Although Steve is brilliant, it was a situation where everyone thought Vanessa was winning that final 3 HOH. Mm-hmm. And I remember you and I were actually in the audience. Yeah. And when that happened,
sitting right behind Vanessa's wife now, I think.
Yeah. Do you remember the gasp? Like when he got, before Julie even said they got it right, we knew in the crowd what the right answer was. They put up their answers. It was opposite. And we knew Steve had just won. We all gasped. We were like, oh my God, is he about to cut her? And, same thing kind of happened on 16 where people were like, oh crap, is Cody about to cut Derrick? So could it happen? Of course. But I'm with you. I think Xavier wins the final HOH overall. I think he teaks Derrick F. And the narrative he presents is that I wanted to honor my final two, which I hope he doesn't do that. But if he does, it is what it is. I hope he owns it to the jury and just says, listen, I took the path of least resistance. But I do think Xavier is going to be the winner of Big Brother 23. We called it from week 1, so it'd be nice for us to be right. Yeah. But and I think he's a deserving winner. But we'll dive into what it means if Xavier is able to finish out this historic season with a W. And we're going to have it all right here next week, Winner Circle, final episode. Any final words before we go?
Nope. You guys know what to do. Turn on those notifications and please subscribe to the channel, guys. We love having you guys here.
Right. And we're just getting started. We're starting Survivor. We said it already. The first episode already dropped. So we're going right from Big Brother to Survivor, then to Celebrity Big Brother. And we're going to have some episodes in between that have nothing to do with reality TV. We already told you we're going to be sprinkling those in. So if you have your notifications on, you're going to be the first ones to know when they drop. It's that simple. So guys, next week, Wednesday night, finale, Big Brother 23. We will see you right here on the Winner Circle to discuss it. Take care.